Mystery number 1. The Great Pyramid's impossible perfection. The story begins on the western edge of the Nile, a river older than the memory of humankind. There, the sands part to reveal a geometry so flawless that even the horizon seems to bow before it. The Great Pyramid of Giza, a monument of 2.5 million blocks, each fitted with the precision of a jeweler, lifted into place long before the wheel was perfected. For centuries, travelers have stood before this mountain of stone and felt something stir inside them, a quiet realization that whoever built it to last forever. The Greeks called it a wonder. The Arabs called it the eternal mountain. Modern engineers simply call it impossible. The first written mention of the pyramid comes from Herodotus around 440 BC. He claimed it was built in 20 years by hundreds of thousands of workers. Yet even he, standing in awe, admitted he did not truly know. How could anyone? Each limestone block weighs as much as a small car. Each angle aligns almost perfectly with true north, an accuracy we struggle to repeat today with lasers. When Napoleon arrived with his scientists in 1798, they measured, mapped, and argued through the night. The numbers did not make sense. The base of the pyramid, divided by its height, produced a ratio eerily close to P, 3.1416. Its height, multiplied by 1,000 millionth part of the Earth's radius, matched the planet's curvature. Coincidence or design? In 1837, British explorer Colonel Howard Vyse blasted his way into hidden chambers above the king's room. Inside, red ochre markings spelled the name of Pharaoh Khufu. For decades that seemed to settle it. The pyramid was his tomb, but the chamber was bare. No sarcophagus, no treasure, no royal inscription of triumph, just stone and silence. If it was a tomb, it was a strangely empty one. Archaeologists would later uncover workers' villages nearby, bakers' ovens, copper tools, fragments of daily life, evidence that real men, not gods, raised the stones. And yet the more we learned, the stranger it became. Copper chisels should have dulled within hours against granite. The alignment of the causeway points exactly to the midwinter sunrise. The air shafts from the king's chamber aim not at random, but toward Orion and the North Star. Every line, every block, every angle seems to whisper of mathematics far beyond its age. Music rises. Soft strings under distant choir. Imagine the scene 4,500 years ago. The Nile at flood. Barges gliding on the water. Torches flickering against the twilight. A line of men stretching to the horizon, chanting in rhythm as they pull a stone that weighs as much as a locomotive. Dust, sweat, and belief. This was more than construction. It was devotion carved into earth. Who conceived it? A pharaoh seeking immortality, or priests following measurements older than Egypt itself? The stones cannot answer. They can only endure. Inside, the pyramid feels alive. The corridors narrow. The temperature cools. Sound falls away until you can hear your own pulse echo through the stone. It is both a machine and a mausoleum, a place where time has been engineered to stop. Visitors describe the same sensation, a pressure in the chest, a stillness that borders on reverence, as if the structure itself remembers every hand that touched it. Over the years, explorers have searched for hidden doors, secret vaults, a missing chamber said to contain the Book of Thoth, the knowledge of the gods. Radar scans reveal cavities yet unexplored. Drones record passages sealed for millennia. The pyramid guards its mysteries well. What we know for certain is this: no blueprint of its creation has ever been found. No papyrus scroll, no royal record. The builders left behind the world's greatest monument, but not the instructions. And perhaps that is the truest mystery of all. For in every age, humankind measures greatness not only by what it creates, but by what it cannot yet explain. We'll step inside the geometry itself, to measure its perfection, to decode its impossible alignments, and to ask whether this monument was ever meant to be a tomb at all. You are watching Dreams of History, and this is Mystery 1. The Great Pyramid's impossible perfection. The Great Pyramid is not merely a monument, it is geometry frozen in stone. For every angle, every proportion, seems to carry a secret message written in mathematics. The base measures 230 meters on each side. Multiply that length by 2, divide by the height, and the number that appears, 3.11416, is the constant of the circle, P. Coincidence, or a deliberate attempt to unite the square and the circle, earth and sky? The four faces are aligned almost perfectly to the cardinal points. Modern surveyors, using satellites, found an error smaller than 1/15 of a degree, an accuracy that modern city blocks rarely achieve. Yet the builders worked with rope, plumb lines, and naked eyes beneath a blazing sun. The pyramid's sides curve ever so slightly inward, creating a concave effect invisible from below. This subtle design allows the structure to resist earthquakes and sandstorms for millennia, an architectural trick rediscovered only in the 20th century. Inside, the corridors slope at exactly 26 degrees 18 minutes, the same angle at which Earth's axis tilts. The passage from the King's Chamber points directly toward the belt of Orion, another to the North Star. Whoever planned this monument understood not just stone, but the motion of the heavens. Engineers have tried to reconstruct the method of lifting those 2.5-ton blocks. Wooden sleds on wet sand, spiral ramps, counterweights, all possible, none proven. The truth may be lost with the laborers who carved their dreams into the desert. What makes the precision more mysterious is the material itself. Limestone blocks from nearby quarries, yes, but the inner chambers use granite brought from Aswan, more than 800 kilometers away. Each slab weighs up to 80 tons. How were they transported across the Nile's cataracts? Ancient reliefs show boats, but no ship discovered from that age could have borne such weight. When physicists analyzed the pyramid's dimensions, they found echoes of the planet it stands upon. The perimeter equals almost exactly half a minute of latitude at the equator. The pyramid's height, multiplied by 43,200, yields Earth's polar radius. That number, 43,200, is not random. It mirrors the precession of the equinoxes, the slow wobble of Earth's axis known only to modern astronomy. How could Bronze Age builders encode a motion that takes 25 to 920 years to complete? Even the weight of the structure, nearly 6 million tons, presses evenly into the bedrock as if the base had been laser leveled. The difference between its highest and lowest foundation stones is less than 2 centimeters. It is as if the builders sculpted the desert itself into a measuring instrument. Scholars have long debated whether this perfection was the result of vast labor or lost knowledge. Did thousands of skilled workers slowly refine each block until alignment appeared by chance? Or did they follow an inherited geometry passed down from an earlier forgotten world? Step inside. The Grand Gallery rises 47 meters long, its corbelled walls closing like hands in prayer. Every step, every ledge, every cavity has a reason, though we no longer know it. The chamber resonates at 432 Hz, a frequency used in ancient musical scales and modern sound therapy. Stand in the center, and your own breath becomes an echo of the structure. Many believe this resonance was intentional, that the pyramid was built to channel vibration, to turn sound into energy. Others notice something else. When lightning strikes near the pyramid, it often grounds harmlessly along its sides. The combination of limestone casing and granite core creates a natural capacitor. Could it be that the Great Pyramid was once a form of energy device, a power plant of the gods? It sounds fantastical, yet the physics remain tempting. Egyptologists caution restraint. They remind us that the pyramid was part of a funerary complex, a bridge between earth and the divine. But even they admit the level of precision is beyond ritual necessity. Whoever designed it with an understanding of balance, of resonance between stone, planet, and sky. Every era has tried to rebuild what the ancients achieved. In 1978, engineers in Japan attempted a 1/10 scale replica using modern cranes. After months of planning, the project stalled. The blocks refused to align. The desert watched in silence, as if amused. 4,500 years later, the Great Pyramid still stands. Its summit truncated, its casing stones stolen, yet its geometry untouched. It defies wind, sand, and time itself. It remains both monument and message. Perhaps the message is simple. Remember what you once were capable of. In the next segment, we'll step beyond the mathematics and the machinery, into the realm of spirit and symbol, to ask why such perfection was pursued and what it was meant to awaken. You are watching Dreams of History. This was segment 2, the engineering miracle. The deeper one walks into the pyramid, the quieter the world becomes. Sound dies, time bends. What remains is a strange awareness, as if you are being measured by the very walls that surround you. To some, it is the silence of death. To others, the hum of creation itself. Ancient Egyptian priests called the pyramid Mer, meaning place of ascension. It was not just a tomb, it was a staircase for the soul. They believed that when a pharaoh died, his ka, the life force, rose through the pyramid shaft toward the imperishable stars of Orion, where the gods of rebirth waited. In that belief, geometry became theology. The ascending passage was the path of transformation, matter becoming light. Every stone, every angle was prayer translated into mathematics. Soft ethereal paths fade. In modern scientists see only engineering. But to the ancients, construction itself was ritual. Workers sang as they pulled the stones, not just to keep rhythm, but to vibrate the air with sacred tones. The voice is a tool, their texts say, for shaping the invisible. Perhaps that is why the chambers still resonate at perfect harmonic frequencies. Stand within the king's chamber and hum a single note. The walls respond, turning one human breath into a cathedral of sound. It is as if the pyramid was tuned to life itself. The ancient word for sound and creation were the same. To speak was to make real. And so they built a structure that could speak to the heavens long after they were gone. There is another theory whispered among the mystics, that the Great Pyramid was not built to honor the dead, but to preserve knowledge. A library written in proportion and angle rather than ink and papyrus. Its height encodes the distance to the sun, its base, the measure of the earth, its slope, the number of days in the year. A cosmic textbook disguised as a tomb. If that is true, then the builders did not carve for one pharaoh's eternity, but for all of ours. They left behind an instruction manual for reality, a reminder that science and spirit were once the same. Language. The philosopher Iamblichus wrote that the gods measure through the mind of man. Perhaps the pyramid was that measurement, made solid, a mirror held up to the universe. When we stand before it, we are forced to confront not the mystery of how, but the greater mystery of why. Why does humanity, in every age, reach for the impossible? Why do we carve mountains, split atoms, cross the void between stars? Maybe the same force that raised the Great Pyramid still moves through us. The ancient hunger to touch eternity. Imagine the moment of completion. The final stone lowered into place, torches flickering against the night. The workers fall silent. A single priest steps forward and speaks the last prayer. Above them, Orion glows in the sky, the same stars that watch us now. In that instant, heaven and earth align. The monument breathes for the first time. 4.5 millennia later, we still feel that breath. The pyramid does not simply exist, it reminds. It reminds us that perfection once walked the earth, carried on the backs of ordinary men guided by extraordinary vision, and so, the Great Pyramid remains what it has always been. A doorway without a handle, a riddle without an answer, a dream too perfect to fade. When we leave its shadow, we carry a strange thought. Maybe the ancients were not trying to reach the gods. Maybe they were trying to remind the gods that humanity, too, could create something divine. This was Mystery 1, the Great Pyramid's impossible perfection. From the sands of Giza, we turn now to the depths of the sea, where rusted gears and broken bronze hide another impossibility. Mystery number 2, the Antikythera mechanism, the machine that time forgot. The year is 1900. A violent storm beats across the Aegean Sea, tossing wooden ships like leaves. A group of Greek sponge divers from Symi is forced to anchor near the rocky island of Antikythera, a place few visit, and even fewer survive in bad weather. When the waves calm, one diver, Elias Stadiatos, straps on his brass helmet and descends into the green twilight of the sea. Minutes later, he returns to the surface, trembling. "There are dead men down there," he gasps. "A whole city of statues." What he had seen was not a city, but the ghost of one, a shipwreck more than 2,000 years old, scattered 50 meters below the surface. Over the next months, divers recovered treasures that seemed impossible to imagine: bronze statues of athletes, marble faces worn smooth by time, amphorae sealed since Rome was young. But amid that splendor lay something no one could explain: a corroded lump of bronze, about the size of a shoebox, fused to wood. When archaeologists in Athens cleaned it carefully, tiny gear teeth emerged from the crust, not one, but dozens, interlocked like the inside of a clock. The year was 1902, and the concept of a computer did not yet exist. Scientists stared at the gears in disbelief. "It cannot be ancient," one exclaimed. "Such technology is from our future." But chemical tests confirmed it. The object was older than Christ. X-ray analysis decades later would reveal more than 30 bronze gears, each cut with microscopic precision. Their teeth were so fine that even modern watchmakers admired them. Around the largest gear, inscriptions in ancient Greek describe the positions of the sun, moon, and planets. The fragments fit together like the memory of a forgotten genius. It was a machine that predicted eclipses, tracked lunar phases, and mapped the movements of Venus and Mercury, built over 2,000 years ago. In that moment, history shifted. Everything we believed about ancient technology had to change. The Greeks, it seemed, had built a mechanical computer centuries before the Renaissance. Yet the machine lay in pieces. Many gears had been lost to the sea, their purpose a riddle. For decades, the Antikythera mechanism sat in a museum case, ignored by most visitors, just a corroded curiosity, until the 1960s, when physicist Derek de Solla Price looked at it again through new eyes. His research revealed not a toy or ornament, but a cosmic machine of astonishing intelligence. Inside the main gear train, he found ratios that matched the Metonic cycle, the 19-year period after which the sun and moon align in the same place in the sky. Other ratios mirrored the Saros cycle used to predict eclipses. Whoever built it knew the language of the stars as well as any modern astronomer. But the machine's true origin remains unclear. Was it crafted in Rhodes, home to the great astronomer Hipparchus, or in the workshop of Archimedes, the mathematician who dreamed of machines that could move the world? No inscription names its maker. Only a few words remain: cycles, risings, phases, Olympiad, enough to hint at its purpose: to measure time not by hours, but by heaven. What fell from that Roman ship 2 millennia ago was not just metal, it was memory. The memory of an age that understood the cosmos as a living clock and humanity as its caretaker. The Antikythera mechanism reminds us that progress is not a straight line. It is a circle. Sometimes knowledge rises, then sinks again into the deep. In the next segment, we will open the machine itself, gear by gear, inscription by inscription, to see how it worked, and why nothing like it would appear again for 1,000 years. Imagine, for a moment, holding a small bronze box in your hands, the size of a dictionary, heavy, corroded, silent. Now imagine that within it lies the memory of the cosmos, etched into 30 interlocking gears. The Antikythera mechanism, when complete, was a machine of unimaginable elegance. Cranks turned gears, gears turned dials, and dials revealed the future of the heavens. It was not a clock, it was a universe reduced to metal. On the front face, 2 large bronze hands once swept around a dial marked with ancient Greek characters, representing the zodiac and the Egyptian calendar. By turning a small handle on the side, one could move forward or backward through time, watching the positions of the sun, the moon, and the planets shift across the heavens. The rear face was even more astonishing. 2 spiral dials mapped the cycles of eclipses and lunar phases. One of them, the Saros dial, predicted when the Earth, Moon, and Sun would align, every 223 lunar months. Another tracked the 19-year Metonic cycle, a rhythm that keeps lunar and solar calendars in harmony. Think about that. This device, built more than 2,000 years ago, could predict an eclipse to the day, centuries before telescopes, centuries before Newton's laws, centuries before the word astronomy meant science. X-ray tomography revealed more than 15,000 tiny characters carved into the bronze plates, like a manual for the stars. They described the motions of Venus, Mercury, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, the 5 wandering lights visible to the naked eye. The Greeks called them planetae, wanderers. And here they wander mechanically, driven by ratios so precise that even a single missing tooth could throw the heavens out of sync. How could such precision exist in a world of hand tools and fire forges? Each gear's teeth were cut by hand with bronze saws, yet the error margin is less than 1/5 of a millimeter, the same accuracy used in modern watchmaking. No other artifact from the ancient world comes close. Music softens, slow ticking continues. Modern engineers have tried to recreate the mechanism using 3D modeling. Every replica reveals new brilliance. The gears are not randomly stacked. They form a perfect chain of mathematical relationships. Gear 1 drives Gear 2 by a ratio of 2:23:19, the same proportion found in the Saros cycle. The Moon's gear includes a small pin and slot system that mimics its varying speed across the sky. An understanding of celestial motion so refined, it mirrors Kepler's work 1,800 years later. To the ancient mind, mathematics was sacred. Numbers were not abstractions. They were the fingerprints of the divine. So perhaps it was not enough to know the heavens. One had to build them, to make the cosmos tangible. That is what the Antikythera mechanism truly was. The divine rendered mechanical. And yet, it raises an even deeper mystery. How could such knowledge vanish? No other machine like it has ever been found. When Rome fell, so too did this mastery of motion and mathematics. For over 1,000 years, the world forgot how to build a model of the sky. Some say it was the work of a single genius, a forgotten student of Archimedes, perhaps, or a craftsman guided by the astronomer Hipparchus. Others believe it represents a lost tradition, a school of engineering wiped away by time, war, and fire. The truth is buried somewhere between those rusted gears. What remains today are fragments, like pieces of an ancient dream. A few bronze gears, half-erased inscriptions, and the haunting realization that someone, somewhere, once understood the universe more deeply than we thought possible. As scientists reconstructed its face, a final detail emerged, a small inscription near the handle. It read simply, "To show the courses of the heavenly bodies." It was not meant for kings or priests. It was meant for wonder, a teaching tool, a cosmic mirror, a gift from minds that refuse to see the stars as distant. The Antikythera mechanism proves that genius is not bound by time. It reminds us that the ancients looked at the same sky we do, but perhaps with a greater sense of connection. For them, the stars were not data, they were destiny. In the next segment, we descend beyond gears and ratios into the meaning behind this machine. Why was it built? Who was it for? And why was it buried at sea, only to reappear after 2,000 years? Somewhere in the halls of the National Archaeological Museum of Athens, behind a glass case, it rests, a lump of bronze and mystery. The Antikythera mechanism, corroded, silent, almost forgotten. Visitors pass by without slowing down, not realizing that within that fragile metal lies the memory of a civilization that once touched the stars. We call it the first computer, but perhaps that word is too small. It was never designed to calculate profit or record numbers. It was designed to remind its maker that the heavens move in patterns, and that knowledge once understood can make the universe feel near. Who built it? No name carved, no signature left. Only the whisper of intellect so bright it left a scar in metal. Was it the hand of Hipparchus, who charted the stars from Rhodes, or a disciple of Archimedes, merging mathematics with machine? Whoever it was, they did not build it for kings or conquest. They built it for truth. When scientists reconstructed the dials, they realized something unexpected. One of the back panels bore tiny inscriptions predicting Olympic Games, the 4-year rhythm that united Greece. The device not only tracked the heavens, but also measured human time, rituals, festivals, life, the cosmos, and humanity turning together. It was a philosophy made mechanical, that the universe and the individual are reflections of each other. The same cycles that move the moon govern the heartbeats of man. The same ratios that define the stars appear in our own design. And then, it was gone. The ship that carried it sank. The knowledge that built it sank with it. Empires rose, temples fell. And for 1,000 years no one would build another machine that could speak the language of the sky. Historians call it the Dark Age. But perhaps it was simply forgetfulness. A long sleep in which humanity dreamed of its own potential without realizing it was once real. When the mechanism was found, humanity awakened again to what it had been. The gears became a mirror, and in that reflection we saw not ancient Greeks, but ourselves. Because every age forgets. We invent, we discover, we believe we are the first to understand the universe, until the past reminds us otherwise. The Antikythera mechanism is that reminder. Its corroded face tells us that progress is not a straight line. Knowledge moves like the planets, forward, then backward, then forward again. And maybe the greatest truth it teaches is that forgetting is as human as discovery. When we look at those gears now, we see more than craftsmanship. We see hope, a hope that our species has always reached beyond its age, beyond its tools, beyond its limits. Even when the sea claims our cities, something survives. The idea that understanding is a form of faith. The Antikythera mechanism was faith made metal. Faith that numbers could hold meaning, that the sky could be read, that order exists behind chaos. It was a message to the future, and for 2 millennia we did not hear it. But now we do. Somewhere between those gears, between bronze and starlight, lies a simple truth. The universe is not out there. It is within us. The diver, Elias Stadiatos, who first saw the wreck, was terrified. He thought he had seen a city of the dead. Perhaps he was right. The Antikythera mechanism is the ghost of a lost world. A world that understood that to measure the heavens is to measure ourselves. Transition. From the depths of the sea, our journey now returns to the dust of the earth, to a land older than Egypt, where gods were once listed as kings, and history began before time itself. Mystery number 3, the Sumerian king list. The gods who ruled before man, before Egypt, before the pyramids, before even the word history existed. There was Sumer, a cradle of civilization nestled between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, where clay turned to language and gods walked among men. It is here that we find a single tablet, broken, burned, and yet immortal, known as the Sumerian king list. On its cracked surface, it records not legends, but names of rulers so ancient that even the gods themselves are said to have lived among them. The first copy of this strange document was unearthed in the 19th century, Deep beneath the ruins of the city of Nippur, archaeologists expected temple hymns or trade records, but instead, they uncovered a list that read like myth disguised as fact. After kingship descended from heaven, the tablet begins. The kings ruled in Eridu. The first king, Alulim, is said to have ruled for 2800 years. The second, Alalngar, for 36,000 years. 6 kings ruled for 200 years before a great flood swept the land. Then, after the flood, kingship descended from heaven once more, and the reigns began to shorten, slowly becoming mortal. To modern readers it sounds impossible. Lifespans that stretch longer than all of recorded history. Cities ruled by gods who descended from the sky. Yet the king list is not written as myth. It is written as record. Precise, linear, detailed, every city, every king, every reign, meticulously counted in a mathematical system of base 60. The same system that still defines our hours, our minutes, our seconds. The clay tablet itself is small, barely larger than a man's hand, but what it carries is heavier than stone. It suggests that civilization did not rise gradually, as modern textbooks claim, but appeared suddenly, as if knowledge itself descended from heaven. The question is, how could people 5,000 years ago invent a history that stretches tens of thousands of years before their own time? Was it myth or memory? Some archaeologists dismiss the early kings as symbolic, perhaps moon cycles mistaken for years, or poetic exaggeration meant to honor divine rulers. Others, however, point to the strange consistency among the versions of the list. More than 15 copies found in different cities repeat the same pattern. Divine kings before the flood, human kings after. Across centuries, the story never changes. Music darkens slightly. Tension builds. When the flood ended, kingship was said to have been re-established in the city of Kish. The first post-flood ruler, Jushu, ruled for 200 years. The next, Kulasinabel, for 960. Then the spans begin to shrink, 420, 300, 120, until the numbers approach something we call possible. It is as if time itself slowed, as if humanity descended from eternity into mortality. The Zayd discovery of the Sumerian king list shook historians because it blended the impossible with the historical. Some of the later kings, like Enmebarajasi of Kish, were later found mentioned in real inscriptions and archaeological layers. In other words, the king list is not pure myth. It merges myth and verified history in the same breath. How could a text contain both gods who ruled for millennia and kings we know actually existed? What truth was Sumer trying to preserve or conceal? The tablet itself now rests in the Ashmolean Museum in Oxford, a fragile window into a world where history and heaven were still the same story. Its symbols, pressed into clay 5,000 years ago, still whisper through the ages. There was a time when gods ruled the earth. In the next segment, we will explore what lies between those impossible numbers, the possible science, the hidden meanings, and the question every civilization has asked: did the Sumerians record their myth or their memory? For more than a century, scholars have stared at those strange numbers, 28,000, 36,000, 200,000 years, and asked the same question: what were the Sumerians really trying to say? To the rational mind, the answer should be simple. Surely no one ruled for 28,000 years. Perhaps, they say, the ancient scribes used a different unit of time. Months mistaken for years, seasons multiplied into eternity. Convert them, and the lifespans shrink to something human. But the math never fits neatly. Even when reduced, the reigns remain far longer than any life could endure, and the consistency across all tablets refuses to fade into coincidence. The Sumerians meant something by those numbers, something we have not yet learned to read. Some historians see symbolism, not chronology. The great pre-flood kings, they suggest, represent dynasties, not individuals, epochs of stability ruled by divine order. Their immense reigns express not lifespan, but the cosmic rhythm of creation. The flood then marks the end of paradise, a reset when divinity withdrew and the brief mortal age of mankind began. Others go further. They notice that the king list mirrors another text, the book of Genesis. In both, the earliest figures live impossibly long: Adam, Seth, Methuselah. In both, a flood divides divine ancestry from mortal history. Did these stories spring from the same ancient memory? A cataclysm so deep it echoed through every later religion. The flood itself is not fantasy. Geological studies reveal massive deluges in Mesopotamia around 5000 BC. River bursts that buried cities in meters of silt. Perhaps the Sumerians preserved those disasters in mythic form, stretching mortal kings into cosmic ages to measure the immensity of what was lost. Yet there is another interpretation, whispered at the edge of archaeology. What if the first lines, "After kingship descended from heaven," were not poetic, but literal? What if the gods were real beings, rulers whose knowledge appeared suddenly, almost alien, transforming nomads into mathematicians overnight? It is tempting, dangerously tempting, to imagine visitors, teachers from the stars, from another age. But even without that, the king list speaks of something extraordinary, the sudden arrival of civilization itself. One generation hunted in the wild, the next built cities, invented writing, tracked the stars, and mapped the heavens. How does such genius appear so abruptly? Linguists notice another clue. The earliest Sumerian words for king, temple, and heaven share a root meaning connection. Kings were not merely rulers, they were bridges between worlds. When the text says kingship descended from heaven, it may describe a transfer, knowledge flowing from the divine into human hands. In that sense, the king list is less a history and more a manual of descent, a record of the moment when wisdom touched earth and then retreated, leaving us to remember it in stories. Pause, gentle wind, single bell tone. For the scholar, it remains literature. For the believer, it is testimony. For the dreamer, it is a map, pointing backward toward a forgotten golden age. Each version of the tablet ends the same way. The kings shrink, their reigns shorten, the divine fades into the dust of time. It is as though humanity has been moving ever since from eternity toward limitation, from gods to men, from miracle to memory. Whether myth or memory, the Sumerian king list holds one undeniable truth. The ancients believed their beginnings were not their own. They saw themselves as inheritors, caretakers of a knowledge older than their cities, older than their gods. And maybe that is why the list still haunts us. Because in its impossible numbers, we sense a possibility our rational minds have forgotten, that something once walked beside us and left behind a trace. We will look beyond the text, to the clay, the sky, and the flood itself, searching for the physical evidence that might prove whether this ancient list is myth or history carved in eternity. To separate truth from myth, we must turn from words to earth. Archaeology is the language of the ground, and in the soil of Mesopotamia, the story of the Sumerian king list begins to take shape. One layer of silt, one broken wall at a time. In 1920, deep in the ruins of Kish, archaeologists uncovered clay tablets that matched the names written on the king list. Enmebaragesi, one of its early post-flood kings, was no longer legend. Fragments of vessels bearing his name appeared in the same strata as early dynastic artifacts. The flood, it seemed, marked not an ending but a transition, from myth to measurable time. In other cities, Uruk, Lagash, Shurupak, the ground told the same story. Thick bands of river clay, meters deep, separating one civilization from another. The marks of a flood so massive it wiped away the memory of what came before. Beneath that clay, older foundations, older tools, and sometimes strange geometries in pottery and symbols that no later culture could explain. Science called it sediment. The Sumerians called it judgment. Both agreed. Something enormous happened here. Music rises, low cello tone, plus airy flute melody. The tablets of the king list survive in many versions, each written centuries apart yet telling the same pattern. Long reigns before the flood, short reigns after. What makes it remarkable is not the exaggeration. Ancient texts loved grandeur, but the consistency. No myth should remain that precise for that long. Somewhere behind the poetry hides memory. Modern researchers have mapped the timeline backward. When the list says, after kingship descended from heaven, it may mark the appearance of city-states, Eridu, Uruk, and Kish, whose sudden sophistication defies gradual evolution. Within a few centuries, writing, mathematics, irrigation, law, and astronomy emerge fully formed. No experiments, no prototypes, just knowledge, as if recalled, not invented. If civilization were a flame, the Sumerians were not its spark. They were its torchbearers. Their cities shimmered with complexity, libraries filled with tablets, observatories aligned with stars, systems of law that still shape ours today. Yet they themselves claimed it was given to them, not by effort, but by descent. The king list begins where human memory ends, and maybe that is the point. The text was never meant to tell who ruled, but what ruled, the principle that order descends, and chaos follows when we forget. Science has its own flood, the flood of time, washing away evidence, leaving us to rebuild meaning from fragments. Every archaeologist knows this truth, that history is mostly silence. What the king list offers is not a map of years, but a reminder of how fragile memory can be. And yet, that silence still speaks. The same base 60 system used by the Sumerians measures our clocks today. Their zodiac still defines our sky. Their myths still echo in our scriptures. Even our concept of kingship, of heaven, of divine order, all born from that same narrow strip of land between two rivers. Perhaps the numbers were never meant to be measured, but felt. Perhaps the lifespans of gods were not a record of biology, but of legacy. The way ideas can live 10,000 years after the flesh has turned to dust. And if we listen closely, that might be the greatest message of the king list. That immortality was never about living forever, but about being remembered. Today, the tablets rest quietly in glass cases, fragments of fired clay that once shaped how humanity saw its own beginning. Visitors walk past them without realizing they are reading the first known timeline of our world. Whether the gods of Sumer were real or symbolic, one truth endures. Humanity has always looked backward to understand where the divine begins and where we begin. From the floodplains of Mesopotamia, our path now turns west again, to the highlands of South America, where another impossible monument rises in silence. Stones cut with the precision of lasers, shaped as if by forgotten hands. Mystery number 4, Pumapunku, the impossible stones of Bolivia high in the Andes of Bolivia, nearly 13,000 feet above sea level, lies a plateau of silence. Here the air is thin, the sun burns white, and scattered across the dust are blocks of stone so perfect that time itself seems to hesitate before touching them. This place is called Pumapunku, the door of the puma. It is part of the greater Tiwanaku complex, once a sacred city that predates the Inca by more than 1,000 years. But even among the mysteries of the Andes, Pumapunku stands apart. When Spanish chroniclers first reached these highlands in the 1500s, the local Aymara people told them a story. Long before humans built Tiwanaku, the gods descended from the sky upon a flash of light and constructed Pumapunku in a single night. The chroniclers laughed until they saw the stones. The blocks scattered across the plateau were not rough, boulders but monoliths of andesite and red sandstone, some weighing over 100 tons. Each face cut flat, each edge sharp enough to draw blood, interlocking like pieces of a vast three-dimensional puzzle. No mortar, no seams, just precision. Archaeologists arriving centuries later expected primitive masonry. What they found defied that word. H-shaped blocks repeated with mathematical accuracy, corners carved with right angles so precise that even a sheet of paper cannot slide between them. Small drill holes bored in perfect circles, grooves that stop at identical depths, as if made by a machine, not by hand, and yet the builders of Pumapunku left no written record, no legend of their own construction. The people who came later, the Tiwanaku, worshipped the site but did not claim to have built it. They called it a doorway to the gods. Early explorers tried to explain it with tools they understood. Some imagined copper chisels and ropes. Others thought of earthquakes splitting once-standing walls. But none could explain the precision. The andesite used here is harder than steel. Even with modern diamond blades, shaping it requires effort. Yet these ancient builders carved it cleanly, uniformly, and transported it across miles of rugged highland terrain. How? No quarry of such scale has been found nearby. No wheel marks scar the plain. No scaffolding remains. Modern engineers who examine the stones speak of tolerances within fractions of a millimeter. They compare the geometry to prefabricated blocks in industrial architecture. But these stones were shaped more than 500 years ago. Some claim far older. What purpose did this structure serve? The surviving foundation hints at a grand temple, a vast platform with 4 gates aligned to the solstices. Some believe it was an observatory, a calendar carved in stone. Others call it a port of legends, a landing place, not for ships, but for something that came from the sky. Whatever the truth, Pumapunku remains unlike anything else on Earth. The joints, the cuts, the alignments, each whisper of forgotten mastery. And in this whisper, we hear the same question that echoes from every ancient monument on our journey so far. How did they know? We will look closer at the stones themselves, their angles, their weight, and the mysterious technology implied by their precision. We will ask whether science can reproduce their perfection today, and if not, what that means for everything we think we know about our past. Walk among the ruins and you notice something strange. The blocks do not look carved, they look manufactured. Each edge forms a perfect 90-degree angle. Each corner repeats the same measurements, as though the builders worked from a single mathematical blueprint. The H blocks, scattered like pieces of a dismantled machine, are the most famous. Stack them together and they interlock seamlessly, slot to slot, groove to groove, as if designed for mass assembly. Modern surveyors have mapped their geometry to millimeter precision. Across dozens of stones, the error margin is less than 1/3 of a millimeter, a tolerance equal to that used in aerospace engineering. And these surfaces are cut in andesite, harder than granite, almost unworkable with Bronze Age tools. So how were they made? Archaeology offers several theories. Some propose that the builders used harder hammerstones to chip the rock, then sanded it smooth with quartz. Others imagine wooden templates and endless measurement, patience as the only machine. Yet even under magnification, the tool marks tell another story. Parallel grooves run like saw blade signatures. Tiny drill holes penetrate with uniform depth and spacing. Details that hint at rotary motion, not percussion. If primitive chisels made these cuts, where are the misstrikes, the uneven edges, the human error? There are none. Engineers from the University of La Paz once tried to recreate a single H-block using hand tools. After weeks of work, the edges still wavered. They turned to diamond-tipped equipment. And even then, the finish lacked the polish of the originals. The conclusion was quiet but clear. The ancients achieved a precision we struggle to match. But perhaps that is the wrong question. Maybe the marvel is not in the tools, but in the thinking. Whoever planned Pumapunku understood geometry as language. Each notch fits a counterpart. Each recess mirrors a projection. It is modular design, concepts of prefabrication and repeatable pattern that would not appear again until the industrial age. And then there is the alignment. The gateways of Pumapunku face exact celestial bearings. The central axis points to the sunrise on the winter solstice. The outer walls align with the lunar standstills that occur every 18.6 years. To mark those positions, one must watch the sky for generations. It means the builders were not guessing. They were astronomers, architects, and engineers in one. Some researchers propose a lost tradition of acoustic shaping, sound used to fracture stone. Others suggest that by combining copper saws with sand and water, the ancients could grind the andesite slowly, millimeter by millimeter. None of these methods fully explain the crisp, machine-like symmetry, but each reminds us that genius can wear humble tools. What everyone agrees on is this: the scale of organization required to plan and execute Pumapunku rivals that of Egypt or Mesopotamia. The quarries lie miles away, yet stones weighing hundreds of tons were moved without beasts of burden, wheels or iron. The pathways show no drag marks. Did they use sleds over wet clay, rolling logs, or something we've forgotten? The high-altitude air answers only with silence. Even in its ruin, the site radiates precision. The more measurements we take, the deeper the enigma grows. It is as if Pumapunku was not built for worship, but for demonstration. To prove that perfection could exist in stone, we'll step beyond calculation and into intention to ask why such mastery was used here and what the people of the Andes believed this doorway truly opened onto. Standing before the ruins of Pumapunku, one feels a strange contradiction. The site is broken, scattered, silent, and yet it feels alive. The stones rest half-buried, their edges still razor-sharp. The shadows that move across them seem to awaken forgotten geometry. Even in ruin, the design breathes precision, intention, and memory. The Aymara elders still tell a story, that in the first dawn of time, the god Viracocha emerged from the waters of Lake Titicaca and spoke the world into being. His words turned chaos into form, sound into stone. He built Pumapunku as the first gate, the place where the gods stepped onto earth. According to legend, Viracocha gave humanity knowledge, how to farm, how to measure the heavens, how to live in harmony. Then he left, promising to return when the stars realign. The people who came after built temples over the ruins, but never claimed to understand them. They called it the place of the first creation. Maybe that is why the walls of Pumapunku point not only to the sky, but to eternity, to something both remembered and forgotten. Some believe the site was once an ancient observatory, a calendar that mirrored the heavens so precisely it could predict solstices and equinoxes with perfect accuracy. Others whisper that the angles and recesses were never meant for humans at all, that they were docking points, energy conduits, or instruments for sound and vibration. But beyond every theory lies a deeper silence, the silence of awe. Because whether divine, alien, or human, the builders of Pumapunku left behind something impossible to categorize. It is as if they carved not a temple, but a memory, a monument to remind future ages that perfection is not a myth. The modern world measures time in seconds. The ancients measured it in stars. We build for convenience. They built for eternity. The difference is not in technology, it is in intention. We ask how they built it. They asked why they built it. And maybe that's the question Pumapunku still asks of us. Not what tools we use, but what purpose we serve. Today, the site remains exposed to the mountain wind. Snow gathers in the crevices of the H-blocks. Tourists walk among the stones, taking photographs. Yet few realize they're standing on what might be the oldest example of impossible precision on Earth. Each groove, each corner, each perfect line, a signature without a name. The builders vanished, their purpose forgotten, their city erased, but their work endures, and through it they still speak. Not in words, but in symmetry. Maybe that's what every ancient monument is, a bridge between memory and mystery, a whisper from a time when knowledge and spirituality were the same thing. The people of Pumapunku believed the stones were sacred because they reflected divine order. They believed that harmony could be carved, that to align with the cosmos, was to honor the gods. And perhaps they were right, because even now, when the first light of dawn strikes the platform each solstice, it shines perfectly through the ancient doorway. The gods may not have returned, but their geometry still does. From the silence of these stones, our journey now crosses oceans once more, to lines drawn not in stone, but in the earth itself. Etched across miles of desert, visible only from the sky, they form patterns too vast for human eyes alone. Mystery number 5. The Nazca Lines. Messages to the sky in the barren plains of southern Peru. There lies a silence that has lasted for nearly 2,000 years. A silence so vast, so empty, that even time seems to hold its breath. Then, one day in 1927, that silence was broken, not by words, but by wings. A Peruvian pilot named Toribio Mejia Cespe was flying low over the desert when he noticed something strange on the ground below. Etched into the reddish earth were lines, long, straight, endless. At first he thought they were simple paths, but as his plane banked and rose, the lines began to connect, to form shapes, enormous shapes, a hummingbird stretching across 300 feet of sand, a spider with legs thin as brushstrokes, a monkey coiled in a spiral. Perfectly formed figures, drawn not for those who walk the earth, but for those who fly above it. What he saw would later be called the Nazca Lines. More than 800 straight lines, 300 geometric figures, and 70 massive animals and plants, none visible from the ground, only from the air. For centuries, travelers had passed across the same desert, never realizing that beneath their feet stretched one of the largest works of art, or communication, in human history. The lines, carved shallowly into the dry soil, have survived for nearly 2 millennia thanks to the Nazca Desert's strange perfection. No rain, no wind, no erosion, just stillness. And in that stillness, messages remain. Archaeologists dated the lines between 500 BC and 500 AD, created by the Nazca civilization, an ancient people who lived in small valleys, weaving textiles and pottery rich with symbolism. But none of their tools, temples, or records explain why they carved the desert itself into patterns only visible from the sky. Some lines stretch for miles, ruler straight, across hills and valleys. Others form geometric shapes, trapezoids, spirals, intersecting grids that seem to point toward the horizon. And then there are the figures: the condor, the whale, the monkey, the astronaut. A humanoid shape with wide eyes, waving from a cliffside. Whoever made them to be seen. But by whom? For decades, scientists searched for explanations. Some said the lines marked irrigation canals or paths for processions and rituals. Others believed they were astronomical calendars, alignments for solstices and constellations. In 1941, German mathematician Maria Rieker devoted her life to the mystery. She measured the lines one by one, living alone in the desert for 40 years. To her, the lines were a kind of celestial observatory, a giant map of the heavens, drawn on Earth. Yet even Rieker admitted, near the end of her life, that she could not explain how such perfect geometry was achieved on such a massive scale, without airplanes, without hills tall enough to see the full design. The largest figure, the heron, stretches longer than the Eiffel Tower laid on its side. Others maintain proportions so exact that even aerial photography struggles to find distortion. To carve these, the Nazca people removed the top layer of oxidized red stones, exposing the lighter clay beneath. One mistake, one wrong step, could destroy the symmetry. Yet across hundreds of figures, not one shows hesitation. Not one was corrected. It is as if the artists worked from above, as if they could see the desert from the sky. The first planes to photograph the Nazca lines would later reveal something even stranger. Many of the geometric lines stretch perfectly toward the rising and setting points of key stars. Some align with Orion, others with Sirius, the dog star. the same celestial markers that guided the Egyptians and the Sumerians thousands of miles away. Coincidence? Or connection? The desert remains quiet, but its silence feels deliberate, like the pause between sentences. The Nazca people are gone. Their language is lost, but their lines remain. Messages waiting for someone to finally understand the language of the sky. In the next segment, we'll look deeper into how the lines were built, what science can prove, and what it still cannot explain. Because in every line carved across that endless desert lies a question that reaches higher than the clouds. When the first archaeologists set foot on the Nazca Plains, they found nothing but lines, straight, endless lines, carved only a few inches deep, simple, too simple, until they realized the scale. From the ground they looked like trails. From the sky, they formed geometry so vast that it defied comprehension. Some lines run for 9 miles without deviation. Others form perfect trapezoids, wider at one end, narrowing precisely at the other, like runways guiding something to land or to rise. The desert itself preserves the lines like a natural vault. No rain has fallen here for centuries. The wind is gentle, predictable. The top layer of red stone shields the white gypsum beneath from erosion. In this silence, time has no tools. But how were they made? Modern tests suggest the Nazca used wooden stakes and rope, simple surveying tools to map angles and distances. With enough patience, they could have carved the entire design without ever seeing it from above. The geometry, they say, is human. The mystery, however, is not the how, it is the why. The Nazca civilization lived between 500 BC and 500 AD. They were artists, potters, and astronomers. Their pottery bears the same motifs as the geoglyphs: birds, whales, monkeys, serpents. To them, these were not animals. They were spirits, messengers between earth and sky, symbols of fertility, rain, and renewal. The desert was their temple, the sky their scripture. The lines were prayers drawn so large that the gods could read them. Scientists like Maria Reicher dedicated decades to decoding the patterns. She mapped over 700 figures, measured their alignments, and discovered something astonishing. Many lines point to the rising or setting of key stars: Sirius, Rigel, and the Pleiades. The Nazca may have built an astronomical calendar spanning miles, marking solstices, planting seasons, and celestial cycles. Their world depended on rain, and rain depended on the stars. Each line, then, may have been both offering and equation, a mathematical prayer carved into the bones of the earth. But not all the patterns align with the heavens. Some form grids across ancient aquifers, natural underground water channels. When scientists used ground-penetrating radar, they found that several major figures sit directly above these channels. Could the lines have been maps of water drawn to honor the spirits that guarded it? The Nazca people believed that life flowed beneath the desert, invisible rivers feeding the earth. Perhaps the lines were paths of gratitude, traced by priests walking barefoot in ritual procession, thanking the hidden waters that kept them alive. And yet, there are shapes no theory can explain. The astronaut, carved on a hill, stares with wide circular eyes and raises one hand to the sky. No star map or irrigation ritual accounts for him. Some researchers see it as a shamanic figure, bridging worlds, human on one side, cosmic on the other. Others whisper it's proof of something older, something not of this earth. Whatever the answer, the figure stands as both question and warning. Who were the Nazca truly communicating with? When satellite imagery was first taken of the Nazca Plateau, one engineer remarked, "It looks like the blueprint of an airport." The world laughed. But the truth remains that some lines stretch in parallel, widening at the ends, forming patterns eerily reminiscent of modern runways. Did the Nazca intend to summon gods descending from the heavens? Or were they imitating something they had already seen? Every explanation reveals only part of the truth. The lines are too vast for mere art, too deliberate for chaos, too ancient for coincidence. whether star map or offering, calendar or communication. They are, at their heart, expressions of faith. Faith that the sky listens, faith that the gods remember. The Nazca people may have vanished, but their words, written not in language but in geometry, still shine when the light is right. We'll rise higher still, above the lines, beyond the theories, and look at the emotional truth behind them. What did the Nazca feel as they carved these endless prayers into the desert? And what message did they hope would echo through the sky, long after they were gone? The sun rises over the Nazca Desert as it has for 2,000 years. No cities cast shadows here, no rivers cut through the sand. Only the wind moves, slow, patient, eternal. From above, the lines still glow pale gold against the rust-red earth. The hummingbird spreads its wings toward the dawn. The monkey curls into infinity, and the astronaut stares forever into the sky, a silent witness to something we may never understand. To stand here is to feel both small and infinite. You realize that every civilization leaves two kinds of monuments: those built to be remembered by people, and those built to be remembered by gods. The Nazca built theirs for the latter. Their lines are not random. They are rhythm, a harmony between dust and star, between question and belief. Each step that traced those miles of line was part of a ritual, a heartbeat, a message, not written in stone, but walked into the skin of the earth. And in that act, they achieved something no technology can replicate: communication without words. Scientists still study the alignments, engineers still debate the precision, but perhaps the meaning was never meant to be measured, only felt. Because the Nazca never looked at the heavens with curiosity alone. They looked with longing. They believed that the sky was alive, that every star was a listening ear, and that to draw upon the desert was to whisper to creation itself. When you rise high enough above the plateau, the lines merge into something unexpected. They form a tapestry, not of animals or geometry, but of connection. Every figure touches another by invisible pathways, as though the Nazca were stitching their world together, mending the bond between earth and sky that modern man has since forgotten. The desert is a blank page, and the Nazca wrote on it with devotion, not ink. They wrote, "We were here, we watched the stars, we believed they watched us back." Even now, when satellites pass overhead, they photograph the same symbols, drawn by hands that never saw an airplane. Thousands of years apart, the message remains the same. Humanity reaching upward, asking if anyone is listening. Maybe the Nazca never sought an answer. Maybe it was enough to ask, because in asking they became eternal. The desert kept their words safe, the stars kept their memory bright, and the wind, still whispering, carries their message to whoever will listen. Every age has its own way of speaking to the unknown. The Nazca carved lines, the Egyptians raised stones. We today send signals into the dark. Different tools, same desire. And maybe that is the real message to the sky, that no matter how much time passes, humanity still dreams of being heard. From the sands of Peru, our journey now turns north, to a land of forests and ancient thunder, where spheres carved by human hands lie scattered across jungles, their perfection as mysterious as the stars that guided their creation. Mystery Numbers, the stone spheres of Costa Rica, the silent perfection in the lush jungles of southern Costa Rica, where the rainforest meets the rivers and the mist never truly lifts. There lies a field of stone unlike any other on earth, perfectly round, silent, and ancient, hundreds of spheres scattered across the land, like the forgotten pieces of a celestial game, some small enough to hold in your hands, others massive, weighing more than 15 tons, cut from a single block of stone, each one flawless, each one carved by unknown hands. The first of these strange orbs was rediscovered in the 1930s, when workers from the United Fruit Company were clearing jungle for banana plantations near the Dickies Delta. One morning, their bulldozers struck something hard, smooth, curved, unyielding. When the mud was cleared away, they found not rock formations, but giant spheres, polished like marble and set into perfect alignment. Local workers, believing treasure lay hidden inside, broke several open with dynamite. They found nothing, only hollow silence and more stone. Word spread quickly through the villages of the stones that were too perfect. Archaeologists soon arrived, led by Doris Stone, daughter of the US ambassador to Costa Rica. She documented dozens of these spheres across the valley, arranged not randomly, but in lines, triangles, and circles, as though they once formed part of a vast design. As more sites were excavated, the number grew, not dozens, but over 300, made of granodiorite and gabbro, stones not native to many of the places they were found. Some were discovered miles from any quarry, deep within dense forest. How had they been carved? How had they been moved? The tools of the region's ancient peoples were stone and wood, yet the spheres were nearly geometrically perfect. Modern laser scanning revealed an astonishing truth. Most deviate from true spherical shape by less than 2 millimeters. Even today, such precision would require specialized equipment. And yet, these were made more than 1,500 years ago. The local legends offer one clue. The indigenous Baruka people speak of gods who once lived among the mountains, wielding a sacred tool that could melt stone with fire. They called it the thunder of the sky. When the gods departed, they left behind the spheres, markers of the world's balance, symbols of perfection between heaven and earth. To archaeologists, the mystery deepened. Many of the spheres were buried intentionally, hidden beneath layers of clay, arranged in patterns aligned to the rising sun or the constellation Orion. Why hide them? Why preserve them? Perhaps the spheres were sacred guardians of the land, or perhaps they marked something long forgotten, an ancient understanding of harmony and mathematics. When workers cleared the last of the banana groves, they uncovered a strange sight, a line of spheres pointing directly toward the Cherokee Mountains, as if charting a celestial path through the jungle. No writing, no carvings, no signs of origin, just smooth, eternal silence. Over time, many spheres were stolen, moved to gardens and museums. Some now rest in the courtyards of San Jose, far from the soil that once held them. Yet the ones that remain in the Dickies Delta still seem to breathe with the earth itself. Their surfaces warm under the sun, cool beneath the rain. They wait, as if for someone to remember what they were made for. We'll look closer at their perfection, how such symmetry could have been achieved, and what modern science says about their mysterious precision. At first glance, the stone spheres of Costa Rica seem simple, stones made round, smooth, silent, but walk among them carefully, touch their surface, and you begin to realize something extraordinary. These are not random shapes. They are geometry made flesh, mathematics turned to stone. Modern 3D scans reveal that many spheres deviate from true roundness by less than 2 millimeters. Some are so perfect that light wraps evenly around their surface, casting shadows of equal curve in every direction. To achieve such perfection in granite and gabbro, stones harder than steel, would require control over volume, weight and balance beyond the known capacity of pre-Columbian tools. The ancient artisans had no iron, no wheels, no cranes, yet the largest sphere weighs more than 16 tons, and the smallest, the size of a human head, is no less exact. Archaeologists have theorized that these were made by heating the rock with fire, then cooling it rapidly with water to fracture the surface, chiseling and grinding again and again with river stones. But that method, repeated over centuries, could not produce the uniformity we see today. The spheres are not just smooth, they are balanced, Their centers of mass align perfectly within millimeters. Drop one, and it rolls as if designed by an engineer. So how did they do it? One theory suggests molds or templates, the use of hemispherical guides carved from wood or clay, shaping each stone gradually to match a master design. Others believe they use sound, low-frequency vibrations to locate imperfections within the rock, much like how modern engineers use resonance to test stress points. There is no proof, only the result, and the result is flawless. The precision extends beyond form. When arranged, the spheres align with mathematical consistency. Many are placed in north-south and east-west axes, matching the solstices. Satellite analysis revealed geometric groupings, triangles, squares, even a perfect equilateral configuration spanning over 150 meters. These were not decorations. They were measurements, a kind of ancient instrument calibrated to the sky. Some researchers link the layout to celestial observation, a ground map of stars, perhaps mirroring the constellations visible over the Dikis Valley at the time of construction. Others see them as territorial markers, symbols of power. The larger spheres near the centers of ancient settlements may have represented the sun, the smaller ones, its orbiting children. But one question still burns through the silence. Why make them perfect? The answer might lie not in logic, but in philosophy. The people of ancient Costa Rica viewed the world as sacred symmetry. The sun, the moon, and the circle were symbols of completeness, balance, and life's eternal rhythm. To carve the circle was to honor creation itself, to echo the perfection of the sky upon the earth. Perhaps each sphere was a prayer in stone, a reminder that order could exist in a world ruled by chaos, and maybe that's why they are flawless. Not because they had to be, but because they believed they should be. In 2014, UNESCO declared the Dikis stone spheres a World Heritage Site, calling them a unique testimony to the artistic and social systems of the pre-Columbian world. Yet even now, scientists cannot say how the artisans achieved their perfection, or why their geometry mirrors that of the cosmos itself. The jungle guards its secret well. The tools are gone, the builders forgotten. All that remains are these silent worlds of stone, spheres that do not age, do not erode, do not speak. And yet, somehow, they communicate. We'll step beyond craft and into meaning, to explore what the spheres represent, and whether they might connect to a deeper pattern shared by other ancient civilizations across the world. The jungle sleeps around them. Birds stir in the canopy. Rivers hum in the distance. Between roots and moss lie the spheres. Silent, unbroken, unchanging, they have no eyes, no mouths, and yet, when the light hits them at dawn, it feels as though they are watching not us, but time itself. Archaeologists measure, scan, and debate their origins, but the people who once lived among them never asked for proof. They already knew what the spheres meant. To them, a circle was not a shape. It was a cycle. Life, death, rebirth, and the eternal return of balance. The sun rose, the moon waned, the stars wheeled, and the circle remained constant. A perfect symbol of order in an imperfect world. So they carved that perfection into stone, not to dominate nature, but to echo it. The placement of the spheres, aligned to solstices and constellations, suggests they were not objects of worship, but instruments of remembrance. To stand among them was to stand at the center of the world, a reminder that humanity too was part of the cosmic rhythm, not above it, not beneath it, but within it. And maybe that's the message the spheres carry across centuries of silence. Perfection is not power, it is harmony. When rain falls, the spheres glisten like planets washed by starlight. When night comes, they fade into darkness, as if returning to the cosmos they once mirrored. No temple surrounds them, no inscription claims them, no single name stands behind their creation. They are the opposite of monuments to ego. They are monuments to balance, to the humility of being part of something greater than yourself. Some believe the spheres marked sacred lands or cosmic pathways. Others see them as guardians of the earth, placed by ancient hands to maintain equilibrium between the human and the divine. The truth, perhaps, is simpler and more profound. They exist because someone once dreamed of perfection and refused to let it stay a dream. Every great civilization leaves behind its question. Egypt left pyramids. Sumer left its kings. The Nazca left lines that stretch into the sky. And Costa Rica left spheres, perfect, eternal, silent questions carved from the heart of the earth. They ask us, have we forgotten how to live in circles, how to move with nature instead of against it? The answers do not lie in museums or theories, but in the spaces between. The spheres remind us that balance is not found, it is maintained. That harmony is not built, it is remembered. And so, they remain, patient guardians of an ancient truth, still standing in the jungle as the centuries pass, waiting for us to listen. As the mist clears over the Decus Delta, sunlight spills once again across the round faces of the stones. And for a moment, they shine like small worlds. Perhaps that was always the message, that Earth itself is a sphere, a living, breathing circle in a universe of circles. From the stillness of the jungle, our journey now descends deep underground, to the darkness of carved chambers so vast they defy logic, a labyrinth built by hands whose names the world never knew. Mystery number 7. The Longyu Caves, underground cities, without builders, deep in the rolling hills of Zhejiang province, China. A farmer once searched for fish. The year was 1992. He found a pond that never dried, no matter how long the drought. Curious, he and his neighbors drained it, bucket by bucket, expecting a shallow basin. What they uncovered instead was a doorway to the impossible. As the last water slipped away, steps appeared, carved steps, descending into darkness. The men followed them down, torches trembling in their hands, and entered a world no one had seen for perhaps 2,000 years. Beneath the village lay a vast chamber of perfect symmetry. Pillars, beams, ceilings chiseled smooth as marble, walls etched with repeating patterns. It was not a cave. It was architecture. Within weeks, more ponds were drained. 17 entrances opened into 17 colossal caverns, each one different, yet all carved with the same spiral patterns, the same flawless angles. Some stretch more than 30 meters high, 40 meters long. The total excavated volume rivals that of the Great Pyramid of Giza. Yet there is no record, no inscription, no single word describing their creation. Archaeologists called them the Longyu Caves, Dragon's Soak. Locals began to call them the underground palaces. The walls bear tens of millions of chisel marks, each stroke deliberate, forming a fine ripple pattern that covers every surface like the texture of silk. Whoever carved them worked in darkness, by hand through solid siltstone. There are no soot stains on the ceilings, suggesting a light source that left no smoke. There are no broken tools, no debris piles, no sign of habitation. The first surveys showed that each cave follows geometric precision. Parallel walls, aligned axes, interlocking angles that fit together like puzzle pieces, as though the entire complex had been planned from a single blueprint. Yet ancient Chinese records, meticulous chronicles that detail floods, famines, even eclipses, say nothing about any massive excavation in this region. Carbon dating of the sediments suggests an age of at least 2,000 years, placing their origin somewhere near the Qin or Han dynasties, the same era that built the Terracotta Army. But while those soldiers stand proudly above ground, the Longyu Caves hide below, as if they were never meant to be found. Explorers who descend into the main chambers describe an eerie quiet. No insects, no echoes of water, just air that feels old, perfectly still. Some walls shimmer faintly under light, the chisel marks catching shadows like the grooves of an ancient record. Each pillar supports its ceiling flawlessly. None have cracked or collapsed in 2 millennia. Whatever secret these caves were built to hold, it was protected with perfection. Were they temples, tombs, storage halls, or shelters for a forgotten civilization? No one knows. But one truth remains. Someone carved entire mountains hollow, left no trace of themselves, and vanished into history's silence. We descend deeper to measure the impossible engineering behind these underground palaces, and to ask how, with no machinery and no record, such perfection could ever have been achieved. To stand inside the Longyu caves is to feel small in the face of something deliberate. The walls rise 30 meters high, every inch carved with parallel lines, millions of chisel marks forming a pattern that never breaks, never wanders, never stops until it meets the floor. These are not natural caverns shaped by erosion or water. They are the result of design and precision beyond reason. Each cave was carved from solid siltstone. No seams, no joints, no stacked blocks, only the living rock itself. Engineers estimate that excavating a single chamber required removing at least 1,000 cubic meters of stone, meaning the entire complex would have taken hundreds of thousands of tons of rock to be cleared. That's equivalent to the weight of more than 100 jumbo jets, carved, carried, and concealed by hand. But the mystery isn't only the labor, it's the method. There are no discarded stones nearby, no waste piles, no tunnels of extraction. Where did all that material go? Did they haul it away through hidden corridors? Or did they use the excavated stone somewhere else? Perhaps to build something we've already misidentified above ground. The tool marks suggest thousands of artisans working in synchrony. Yet every mark follows the same angle, depth, and spacing, as if carved by a single mechanical hand. How could that uniformity be achieved without modern machinery? In 2002, Chinese engineers studied the pattern density under magnification. The consistency was so perfect that they proposed a single working model. The caves must have been carved from top to bottom in one continuous operation, using scaffolding and light sources that left no smoke or soot behind. But that leads to a new question. What kind of light? No signs of torches or lamps were ever found. The ceilings are clean, not a single trace of soot or oil residue. That means the builders used a light that left nothing behind. Some speculate they reflected sunlight from mirrors, others imagine chemical luminescence, or something entirely unknown. Whatever it was, it worked perfectly, illuminating chambers large enough to fit entire cathedrals. The internal structure of the caves is mathematically precise. Each pillar stands at a uniform angle of 60 degrees, evenly distributed to bear the weight of the mountain above. The walls follow true cardinal directions: north, south, east, west. Their alignments consistent across every chamber, as though they were designed on a single master plan. Yet there are no connecting tunnels. Each cave exists as a separate world, close to others, sometimes sharing only a thin wall, but never intersecting, never overlapping. How did they know exactly where to stop? How did they carve side by side without breaching the next chamber? It suggests either precise surveying equipment or a level of coordination that defies ancient possibility. The stone itself, siltstone, is fragile when exposed to moisture, yet the caves remain intact after 2,000 years. Not a single pillar has collapsed. Modern engineers who studied the structure found no evidence of reinforcement. The design itself distributes stress perfectly. A balance between geometry and gravity so flawless that even earthquakes have left the caves untouched. There are also patterns carved into the walls. Strange, rhythmic ripples like waves frozen in stone. Some believe these are decorative. Others think they served a hidden acoustic purpose, dispersing sound evenly across the chamber, turning the caves into vast resonant halls. When tested with low-frequency sound, the walls produced echo patterns consistent with modern sound dampening technology. What could they have been used for? Rituals? Speech? Sound experiments? Nobody knows. Even the dating of the caves resists certainty. Artifacts found nearby date back more than 2,000 years. But the caves themselves could be older, perhaps inherited from an age so forgotten that even the first emperors of China built their legends upon its memory. And so the mystery remains. 17 vast chambers, carved with impossible precision, hidden beneath a quiet village, untouched by time and unclaimed by history. We will explore not just how, but why. What purpose did these caverns serve? Were they temples, tombs, or something far stranger? A technology of the earth itself, left behind by a civilization now lost to time. Mystery number. Baalbek. The giants of stone in the dry heart of Lebanon's Bekaa Valley, where sunlight turns dust into gold. There lies a hill called Tel Baalbek, the hill of the Lord Baal. From afar, it looks like ruins, columns half fallen, steps worn smooth by centuries of silence. But as you draw closer, you begin to see the impossible. At the base of the ancient platform stand stones so large that language itself seems too small to describe them. Blocks of limestone weighing over 800 tons each, cut, shaped and lifted into place thousands of years ago. 3 of them form the trilithon, a row of megaliths so massive that even today's cranes struggle to imagine their movement. Each one longer than a city bus, thicker than a man is tall, perfectly fitted without mortar, joints so tight that a blade cannot slide between. Above the trilithon rises the Temple of Jupiter, once the largest religious complex in the Roman world, built upon foundations so ancient that even Rome called them mysterious. The Romans expanded the temple, yes, but they did not lay its base. The base was already there when they arrived. Inscriptions on Roman stone speak of construction, but none mention the megalithic platform. It's as though they found it, marveled at it, and decided to build upon it, never daring to ask who had done what. Even they could not. The first modern explorers to study Baalbek in the 19th century wrote in disbelief. These stones, one said, are beyond the strength of any ancient or modern power. The largest, known as the Stone of the Pregnant Woman, still lies half buried in the quarry a few hundred meters away. 1,000 tons of carved perfection, cut but never moved, as if the builders simply vanished before completing their work. Then, in 2014, archaeologists discovered an even greater giant beneath it, the Forgotten Stone, estimated at nearly 1,200 tons, making it the single largest hewn stone block in human history. Yet it, too, rests unfinished. A monument to an ambition that exceeded even imagination. The mystery is not just their size, it's the precision. Each block aligns to the next with mechanical accuracy, forming a level foundation that has endured earthquakes, wars, and millennia. Some researchers believe the stones are older than the Roman Empire itself, perhaps remnants of a pre-Diluvian civilization, a culture whose memory survives only in myth. The ancient Greeks called this place Heliopolis, the city of the sun. To them, it was sacred ground, a site where gods once descended. Long before, the Canaanites worshipped Baal, god of the storm and fertility, and believed his temple stood exactly here, where heaven touched earth. The name Baalbek still carries that echo. Baal, the god, Bek, the valley, a place of power, a throne of giants. But who moved these stones? No ancient texts describe their construction. No quarries show signs of primitive transport. To cut, shape, and position blocks of this magnitude would require not only unimaginable strength, but mathematical understanding, knowledge of balance, leverage, and vibration that history says should not have existed. And yet it did, because Baalbek stands, The question is not whether the stones are real. The question is how and why. Were they part of a lost culture's monument to the heavens, a foundation built for something even greater than the gods of Rome? Or are they the remains of a civilization we've chosen to forget? One that once held the secret of moving mountains, will measure the impossible itself. The logistics of the trilithon, the modern experiments that tried to move such stones and failed, and the theories that reach far beyond recorded history. The trilithon of Baalbek is not just a platform, it is a paradox. 3 stones, each weighing more than 800 tons, placed so precisely that even today, engineers can't agree on how it was done. No lifting technology we know of from antiquity could raise them. The Romans built wonders, yes, aqueducts, amphitheatres, arches, but they left behind no mention, no machinery, no miracle strong enough to move these stones. To move one block of this size, even a few feet would require traction forces exceeding 40,000 men, and yet these were not moved a few feet. They were lifted nearly 20 feet high, stacked with surgical precision upon smaller stones below, creating a foundation level so exact that modern surveyors find deviations of less than 1 millimeter. The precision raises more questions than it answers. Each surface is flat, smooth, and perfectly square. Impossible to achieve by hammer and chisel alone. Tool marks visible under magnification suggest controlled abrasion, as though the builders used some unknown polishing technique that fused geometry with intuition. Engineers have tried to replicate the feat. In the 1990s, a team attempted to move a 1,000-ton block using cranes and steel rollers. The effort failed. The machinery buckled. Even the world's largest land-based cranes today can lift barely 700 tons under perfect conditions. And Baalbek's stones were not only lifted, they were fitted, ancient. Builders somehow balanced them perfectly atop one another, without cracking, without shifting, and without any visible sign of stress or mortar. The seams between blocks are so thin that even a strand of hair cannot pass through. This isn't rough assembly, this is precision construction, architecture bordering on the impossible. To this day, archaeologists debate the sequence of construction. Did the Romans build the temple on top of an older foundation, or did a civilization long before them, perhaps thousands of years older, lay those base stones for purposes now lost? Evidence suggests the latter. The lower blocks, the largest ones, show erosion patterns older than the Roman additions. Their placement beneath the Roman work implies that the site had already been sacred long before Jupiter's temple rose above it. So how old could it be? Some researchers link Baalbek to the legends of Enoch and the Watchers, others to the pre-flood builders mentioned in the Epic of Gilgamesh. Ancient texts describe giants who moved mountains and built cities for the gods. Echoes of the same story found in Sumer, in Egypt, in South America. But mythology aside, the question remains, how could human hands achieve such perfection without the leverage, machinery, or mathematics we take for granted today? Some propose the use of vibration, sonic. Technology experiments in the 1970s showed that sound waves at certain frequencies can cause stone to lift slightly or lose friction momentarily. Tibetan monks demonstrated a similar concept, using synchronized horns to make heavy boulders tremble and move short distances uphill. Is it possible that the builders of Baalbek used sound, resonance, or an unknown science of balance? It would explain much and prove nothing, because Baalbek offers no tools, no blueprints, no answers. The only thing left is evidence and awe. Above the trilithon, the Roman temple's ruins still stand, smaller, more fragile, yet glorious. But beneath, the foundation endures unchanged, as if built for eternity. Itself, engineers marvel that the alignment of the platform is so perfect that water still drains along the original channels, carved more than 2,000 years ago, with precision down to fractions of a degree. There's a strange Sense of humility when you stand before those stones. They do not boast. They do not explain. They simply exist beyond logic, beyond time. And in that stillness, you begin to understand that some structures were not made to be solved. They were made to be remembered. We'll explore the spirit of Baalbek, its legends, its myths, and why this ancient platform continues to draw people who believe it hides the secret of our forgotten origin. There is a silence in Baalbek that feels heavier than sound, the kind of silence that remembers. Between the ruins of the Roman temple, the scattered columns, and the carved lintels, the three giant stones of the trilithon still rest in perfect formation, unmoved for perhaps 10,000 years or more. Even earthquakes could not shift them. They lie there, eternal, like the heartbeats of the earth itself. To the ancients, this place was sacred long before history began. The Canaanites called it the House of Baal, home of the storm god who commanded thunder and rain. When the Greeks came, they named it Heliopolis, the city of the sun. And when Rome conquered it, they crowned it with marble, building the temple of Jupiter, raising columns so tall they seemed to hold the sky itself. But even they, the greatest engineers of their time, could not explain the foundation beneath their feet. The stones were already ancient, already perfect. The Romans built their temples upon them, just as later empires built their myths upon the ruins. Each civilization looked at Baalbek and saw the same thing, a message written in stone by hands that should not have existed. Some legends say the platform was built by Cain, the first son of man, as punishment, a monument to endure until the end of time. Others whisper that it was the work of the Nephilim, the fallen giants from the Book of Enoch, who moved mountains at the command of the gods. And in the stories of Lebanon's oldest tribes, Baalbek was where the gods descended, where heaven touched the earth. Science measures, calculates and compares, but the stones do not answer. They sit in the sun, silent witnesses to forgotten ages, unbothered by our explanations. Because Baalbek was not built only for function. It was built for remembrance. It was a dialogue between man and eternity. When sunlight falls across the trilithon, each block glows as if alive, the limestone breathing light through its surface. Some visitors say the stones hum faintly, that if you press your ear against them, you can feel a low vibration, as if the earth itself is speaking through the weight. Whether that hum is imagination or truth doesn't matter, because in that moment, you understand what the builders knew. That sound, symmetry, and stone are languages of the same voice. Maybe the people who carved Baalbek didn't just build temples. Maybe they built anchors. Anchors between heaven and earth, between the divine and the mortal, between memory and time. Every great civilization has one. A place where the impossible becomes inevitable. For Egypt, it was Giza. For Sumer, Eridu. For Lebanon, it is Baalbek. The stones do not move, but they speak to everything that does. To every explorer, every believer, every skeptic who stands before them. They ask one question, the same one asked by every mystery we've uncovered. Who taught the first builders? Who whispered geometry to minds that had not yet learned to write? Who shaped the first stream of stone? Perhaps the answer lies not in the heavens, but within ourselves. Maybe the ancients weren't following gods from the sky. Maybe they were following the divine spark within humanity, the same spark that still drives us to create, to build, to understand. The same dream that made them lift mountains still beats quietly in us. When night falls over Baalbek, the stars rise directly above the trilithon, constellations frozen in alignment with the ancient stones below. It's as if the universe still remembers this place, still shines upon it like an old friend. And as the wind moves across the valley, you realize the truth that connects every mystery of our journey. From Sumer to Egypt, from the Andes to the deserts of Lebanon. They all reached for the same thing, connection. From the giants of Baalbek Our path now leads east once more, to the mountains of Turkey, where a discovery buried beneath dust and time may rewrite the very story of civilization itself. Mystery number: Göbekli Tepe, the first temple on Earth. On a lonely hill in southeastern Turkey, just outside the city of Şanlıurfa, a shepherd once paused to rest. His sheep grazed quietly among stones that jutted from the ground like worn teeth. The year was 1994. The shepherd's name, Savak Yildiz. What he found that day would tear open the timeline of human civilization. Archaeologists were called in. At first, they thought it was another burial mound, one of thousands scattered across Anatolia. But as the first spades dug through the dust, something impossible emerged. Massive T-shaped limestone pillars, arranged in perfect circles, carved with animals that had not walked these lands for 10,000 years. The carvings were sharp: foxes, scorpions, cranes, wild boars, not fading relics but vivid, deliberate art. Beneath each circle lay another, buried deliberately. The builders had covered their own creation, layer by layer, as if hiding it from the eyes of the future. Radiocarbon testing stunned the world. These stones were 12,000 years old, built at a time when humanity was still thought to be primitive hunters, thousands of years before the first city, before agriculture, before the wheel. Göbekli Tepe, the Potbelly Hill, is now recognized as the oldest known temple on Earth. Its builders had no metal, no written language, and yet they carved, transported, and erected stones weighing 10 to 20 tons, shaping them into circles that mirror the stars above. Each pillar stands like a silent guardian, its flat face etched with life, predators, prey, abstract symbols whose meaning we still can't decipher. Some show hands folded in front, suggesting these T-shapes were stylized human figures, giants of stone standing in eternal congregation. As archaeologists uncovered more, the story of civilization itself began to unravel. For centuries, we believed that religion came after agriculture, that humans settled, farmed, and then built temples. Göbekli Tepe whispered the opposite. It suggested that faith came first, that people gathered to worship before they learned to sow, and in gathering, in working together for something greater than survival, they created the foundation for society itself. The site revealed more than 20 stone circles, each older than the pyramids, older than Stonehenge. Under every layer, more pillars waited, untouched for 12 millennia, preserved by the very soil that buried them. No graves, no houses, no signs of daily life. Göbekli Tepe was not a city. It was a sanctuary. And the question that haunts every researcher still: how did they do it? How did a people with no agriculture feed hundreds of workers? How did they design architecture on this scale without mathematics or metal tools? How did they know to align their stones with the stars, centuries before astronomy even had a name? Each discovery here rewrites a page of history. Every pillar uncovered shifts the border between myth and fact. Perhaps these were the first priests. Perhaps this was the first cathedral of humankind, the place where we learned not just to survive, but to believe. The pillars of Göbekli Tepe stand half-buried still, their carved faces staring at the horizon, at the stars that once guided their makers. It is said that when night falls over the hill, and the wind moves softly through the excavation pits, the stones seem to whisper, not of gods or kings, but of beginnings. We'll uncover the engineering and symbolism of Göbekli Tepe, the strange carvings, the celestial patterns, and what they tell us about the people who may have built the first temple on Earth. The sun sets over Göbekli Tepe, and as the light fades, the hill begins to change. Shadows stretch between the T-shaped pillars, carving lines that fall not randomly, but precisely, as though the stones themselves were keeping time. Each pillar faces a direction, and together, they form circles aligned with the stars. Modern surveys show that the enclosures are oriented toward the constellation Cygnus, the celestial swan, a formation that 12,000 years ago marked the North Pole of the Milky Way. To the ancients, that was the gate of souls, the path between life and the beyond. Every great civilization that followed, the Egyptians, the Sumerians, the Mayans, built their temples and pyramids along this same stellar axis. But Göbekli Tepe came first. It was as if the builders already knew what the stars would one day teach the rest of the world, that heaven and earth mirror each other. The pillars are carved, with animals that appear chaotic. Foxes, snakes, vultures, wild boars, lions. But when the carvings are plotted across each enclosure, their placement matches constellations seen in the night sky of 10,000 BC, the vulture, Sagittarius, the scorpion, Scorpius, the boar, Orion's belt. It is not random. It is a cosmic map carved into the skin of the earth. The ancients who built Göbekli Tepe were not farmers or kings. They were sky watchers. To them, every star was a message, every sunrise a resurrection. They track the movements of the heavens not to control them, but to understand their reflection on earth, to align themselves with the rhythm of the cosmos. And here, on this lonely hill, they turn that understanding into stone. The carvings are not just symbols, they are language before language. Some depict hands folded over the stomach, a sign of death or reverence. Others show animals circling a central pillar, perhaps representing spirits revolving around a divine axis. One pillar shows a headless human beside a vulture, which many believe signifies the soul's journey to the afterlife. A belief far older than any religion we know today. When night falls, the sky above Göbekli Tepe fills with stars, bright, raw, untouched by city light. Archaeologists working late have said the pillars seem to glow in the moonlight, as if remembering what they were built to face. The alignment of enclosure D, the oldest and most perfect, points to the rising of Deneb, the brightest star in Cygnus, the cosmic swan. To the builders, this may have marked the entrance to the heavens, and yet there is a greater mystery. The people of Göbekli Tepe did not live here. There are no homes, no hearths, no graves. They came from miles away, across hills and rivers, to build this place, then buried it when it was done, as if closing the door to something sacred. No one knows why. Some scholars believe they built the temple to honor their ancestors, a communion between the living and the dead. Others think Göbekli Tepe was a gathering point, a spiritual magnet that drew nomadic tribes together, binding them through ritual and myth. The birth of community, the dawn of civilization itself. What is certain is this: they built something that outlived their names, something that speaks a language only the stars still understand. Göbekli Tepe stands as proof that our ancestors were not primitive. They were poets of the cosmos, artists of eternity. They looked at the heavens not for power, but for purpose, and perhaps that's why this temple still stands. Not because it was built with stone, but because it was built with belief. We will descend beyond theory, into the heart of Göbekli Tepe's meaning. Why did they bury the world's first temple? What did they fear or protect? And what does this ancient sanctuary tell us about the moment when humanity first looked up and saw the divine staring back? The archaeologists still dig, brushing dust from stone that hasn't seen light for 12,000 years. Every strike of their trowel feels like a whisper breaking the silence of an ancient prayer. Yet for all that has been uncovered, one truth remains hidden. Why did they bury it? Göbekli Tepe wasn't destroyed. It was entombed, carefully, deliberately, as if the builders knew that one day the world would forget, and they wanted to preserve the memory of who we once were. The layers of earth are like pages of a book written backward, each stratum older, each more silent. At the deepest point, beneath the oldest pillars, lies a floor polished smooth as glass. No bones, no fire pits, no tools, just emptiness. As if this was never meant to hold the living, but to remind the dead that they were never alone. Short pause. Flute enters softly. Some believe Göbekli Tepe was the first map of the heavens. Others call it humanity's first cathedral. But perhaps it was neither. Perhaps it was something simpler. A message carved not for gods, not for kings, but for us. Music swells. Emotional tone of revelation. Maybe the builders buried the temple because they knew the world was changing. The Ice Age was ending. Forests spread, rivers moved. The sky they once worshipped shifted. They buried their temple as one buries a memory. Not to forget it, but to protect it. To ensure that when the world was ready again, someone, anyone, would find it and remember how belief began. The pillars, with their carved hands, their silent gazes, stand like guardians of an unspoken truth. That before we learned to rule, we learned to wonder. Before we built empires, we built meaning. And in that meaning, we found ourselves. Every mystery we've journeyed through, from the pyramids to Baalbek, from the caves of Longyu to these stones of Anatolia, speaks of the same human longing. The desire to leave behind proof that we were here, that we understood something greater, even if we could never name it. Göbekli Tepe is more than the first temple. It is the first conversation between humanity and the infinite, between silence and creation, between the dreamer and the dream. And perhaps that is the real message buried beneath. That belief is not a structure. It is an act of creation. The same hands that shaped stone into gods would one day shape thought into art and imagination into civilization. When you stand on Göbekli Tepe's hill and the sun sets behind the mountains, shadows of the T-shaped pillars stretch across the ground like silent sentences. And if you listen long enough, you might hear it, the same heartbeat that began it all. The builders of Göbekli Tepe are gone, but their message endures. We were not the first dreamers, but we were the first to remember the dream. From the hill of the first temple, our path now turns west into the cold waters of the Atlantic, toward the legend of a city that shone brighter than any star. A world lost to time and swallowed by the sea. Mystery number 10. Atlantis, the city that dreamed of itself. Long before maps, long before names, there was a story whispered across every sea. The story of a city that fell into the ocean because it flew too close to the gods. The story of Atlantis. The first to speak of it was Plato, around 360 BC, in two dialogues, Timaeus and Critias. He wrote of an island beyond the Pillars of Hercules, larger than Libya and Asia combined, where a civilization of unmatched beauty and power rose from the sea, mastered the elements, and then, in a single day and night of misfortune, vanished beneath the waves. To some, it was allegory, Plato's warning about the corruption of power, a tale meant to mirror Athens' own rise and hubris. But to others, it was not a parable, it was a memory of something humanity had truly lost. For centuries, scholars have hunted the location of Atlantis, in the Atlantic, beneath Antarctica, in the Mediterranean, off the coast of Spain, under the sands of the Sahara. Yet every time a new theory emerges, the ocean seems to whisper the same answer. You are looking in the wrong place. But there are fragments, traces of memory scattered like shells along the shore of time, ancient maps showing islands that no longer exist, myths from Egypt, Sumer, and even Mesoamerica telling of a great land destroyed by floods and fire. Civilizations that, though separated by oceans, all speak of a golden age that ended in water. Plato described Atlantis as a marvel of symmetry and design. Concentric rings of land and sea surrounding a great central temple built in honor of Poseidon, god of the deep. Bridges linked the rings, walls were plated with orichalcum, a mysterious metal said to gleam like fire. Water channels flowed through the city, Gardens bloomed on terraces, and at its heart stood a massive pillar engraved with the laws of Atlantis, written in the tongue of the gods. They possessed great power, Plato wrote, and they became filled with pride. But when the divine portion within them faded, they sought to conquer the world beyond. And so, the gods, angered by their arrogance, unleashed earthquakes and floods. And Atlantis, the city of perfection, sank into the sea. For centuries, this was myth, a warning, but as the 20th century came, so did discovery. Sonar scans revealing sunken ruins near the Azores, circular patterns off the coast of Spain and Morocco, and strange structures lying deep beneath the Caribbean. Could these be the remnants of the lost world? In 2018, researchers studying satellite imagery of the Eye of the Sahara, also known as the Richat structure in Mauritania, noticed something remarkable. A series of concentric circles, perfectly matching Plato's description of Atlantis's design. The formation's diameter, roughly 23 kilometers, exactly the size Plato recorded. Geological studies show that the region once held water, ancient riverbeds, marine fossils, and signs of cataclysmic erosion by flood. Some began to wonder, what if Atlantis was not an island in the ocean, but a city drowned by time, buried beneath the Sahara's sands? The idea seems impossible, yet so does the story itself. Everywhere we look, from the Andes to the Mediterranean, from Egypt to Mesopotamia, there are echoes of something older, a civilization that fell, and whose memory became legend. Whether Atlantis was real or not, its story refuses to die, because deep within that myth lies something universal, a mirror of humanity's greatest truth, that what we build to last forever can vanish in a single night. But perhaps the real mystery of Atlantis is not where it was, but why the memory remains, why every culture dreams of a paradise lost, why we keep searching for something we already feel inside. We'll descend into the engineering of Atlantis, exploring how such a city might have existed, how its technology and geometry inspired legends across civilizations, and what clues modern science has found beneath the waves. If Atlantis existed, it was not merely a city, it was a machine, a living organism of stone and water, designed with symmetry so perfect that even the gods would have called it divine. Plato described its capital as concentric rings of land and sea, connected by bridges, surrounded by walls that shone with precious metals. The outer ring was for ships, vast harbours where fleets of triremes and vessels of unknown design would rest. The middle ring was the city. Homes, gardens, temples all carved from white, black, and red stone, and at its centre stood the great temple of Poseidon, a towering monument where the air shimmered with energy. The people of Atlantis were said to have harnessed forces that the world would not rediscover for thousands of years. They built irrigation systems that moved against gravity, aqueducts that pumped water through magnetic pressure. Their ships were powered not by wind, but by an unknown energy described by Plato as the fire of the earth. Many believe this referred to geothermal power, a technology only rediscovered in modern times. Imagine it, a civilization thousands of years before recorded history, tapping into the planet's natural currents, converting heat, magnetism, and sound into motion. Even today, we can barely reproduce such balance between architecture and energy. In recent decades, explorers scanning the ocean floor near Bimini, Cuba, and the Azores have discovered structures that defy explanation. Massive geometric blocks, smooth terraces, and road-like formations arranged in perfect grids, now buried beneath coral and time. The Bimini Road, as it's called, lies off the coast of the Bahamas, a series of rectangular stones that form a clear pattern, precisely 700 meters long. When divers first explored it in the 1960s, they were struck not only by its symmetry, but by how the joints between stones seemed cut, not broken. Some scientists called it a natural formation. Others weren't so sure. Electromagnetic readings showed strange anomalies, faint currents, as though the stones themselves once conducted energy. The same phenomenon has been detected near the Azores Plateau, where submerged walls and pyramidal structures appear beneath volcanic ridges. Could the Atlanteans have discovered a form of piezoelectric energy? Energy produced by the pressure of stone, quartz, limestone, and granite. The same materials found at Baalbek, Giza, and the Great Pyramid all produce electrical charge when compressed or vibrated. Ancient builders around the world seem to know this secret. Was Atlantis the source of that knowledge? The first civilization to understand that the Earth itself could be a power source. The philosopher Cant, one of Plato's students, claimed that Egyptian priests told him the story of Atlantis was true, that the records of the lost island still lay in the archives of Sais, written in a forgotten language, and they described the Atlanteans as masters of vibration, of frequency and sound. They could move stone as easily as air, one account said, for they had learned the tone that opens the world, sound that moves stone. The same idea echoes in Egypt, Tibet, and even the legends of the Andes. In Bolivia's Tiwanaku, builders carved and lifted blocks of andesite so precisely that modern engineers still struggle to explain it. The same precision exists at Baalbek, the same at Giza. Perhaps these weren't separate wonders at all, but fragments of one lost blueprint, a shared inheritance from a vanished world. If Atlantis truly existed, its technology may not have been advanced in the way we imagine, not mechanical, not digital, but natural. A civilization that understood the language of the planet. Magnetism, sound, geometry, balance. Their machines may have been made of stone and resonance, not metal and wire. And in that harmony, they found power far beyond our own. But power has always carried a shadow. According to Plato, the Atlanteans began to use their gifts not to uplift, but to dominate. Their technology became a weapon, storms summoned, land reshaped, the very forces of nature bent to pride. And when they lost control, the earth took back what was hers, the seas rose, the land trembled, and in one day and one night, Atlantis, the city that dreamed of perfection, was gone. Or was it? Because myths do not vanish. They echo. And the echoes of Atlantis live on in the architecture of Egypt, in the star maps of Sumer, in the sound geometry of South America, and in every legend that begins with, "There was once a place where the gods walked among men." We will close the circle. We will uncover not the fall of Atlantis, but its legacy. What did this lost world leave behind in our DNA? Our myths and our desire to build the impossible. And could it be that the dream of Atlantis never died? That it simply became us? The sea keeps its secrets well. Beneath miles of shifting tides and silent pressure, the ruins of our oldest memories lie. Stones swallowed by time, echoes lost in endless blue. But not everything that sinks is gone. Atlantis may have vanished from the earth, but it never vanished from the human heart. Because every story we tell of paradise lost, every dream of perfection, every monument we raise to the sky, carries its reflection. Atlantis is not a city. It's a memory of who we were and who we still hope to become. When Plato wrote of Atlantis, he wasn't writing about geography. He was writing about memory, about a time before the fall, before we forgot the harmony between power and wisdom, between creation and humility. A time when knowledge and spirit were not enemies, but partners. And perhaps that's the true legacy of the lost world. Every great civilization that followed, Egypt, Sumer, the Indus Valley, the Maya, built their own versions of Atlantis. Cities of symmetry, temples aligned to the stars, myths of floods and golden ages, each a fragment of something older, a whisper from before history began. Look closely, and the pattern reveals itself. The pyramids of Giza, the ziggurats of Mesopotamia, the stones of Baalbek, the spheres of Costa Rica, the carvings of Göbekli Tepe, all born of the same dream, to reach the heavens and leave a mark on eternity. And that dream, that unyielding, defiant, beautiful dream, is Atlantis. Perhaps that is why her story never dies. Because deep down, we all remember her, not as a city, but as a feeling. The feeling of standing on the edge of something vast, looking at the horizon, knowing there was once a time when we and the world spoke the same language. Maybe that's why we still build towers, why we still map the stars, why we still chase what lies beyond the horizon, because the people of Atlantis never truly vanished. They became us. The dream that drowned was not lost. It evolved. The stone that sank beneath the sea became the foundation of our imagination, and through that, Atlantis still lives in every invention, every art, every search for truth. What if the gods never punished Atlantis? What if they simply called it home? What if the flood was not destruction, but transformation? The sea taking back what was always its own, and scattering its wisdom across the world for humanity to rediscover piece by piece, age by age. And now, 12,000 years later, here we are, telling the same story, searching the same stars, dreaming the same dream. We are the children of a forgotten dawn, the descendants of the dream that built pyramids, temples, and songs, the living legacy of a world that refused to stay buried. So when you hear the sea at night, when you see the reflection of stars on dark water, listen closely. You might hear them, the builders, the dreamers, the Atlanteans still building, still dreaming, still whispering, remember us, because maybe we are Atlantis, and Atlantis is dreaming through us. From the stones of Göbekli Tepe to the waves above Atlantis, the dream has never ended. It only changes form. The tide recedes and the waves grow quiet, but the dream does not end. From the deserts of Egypt to the frozen peaks of the Andes, from the carved chambers of China to the drowned ruins beneath the sea, the earth still hums with unanswered questions. The ancients left behind more than monuments. They left a map of wonder, a trail of riddles carved in stone and memory, leading us back to the place where knowledge was born. And every time we think we've reached the end, the earth opens another door, a hidden passage beneath the ice, a pattern seen from the stars, a voice echoing through time, whispering, "You have only begun to remember." Perhaps the pyramids were not tombs, but messages. Perhaps the stone spheres were not decoration, but coordinates. Perhaps the gods we read about were not divine at all, but reflections of what humanity once was, what it might become again. The mysteries do not sleep, they wait. In the rhythm of tides, in the whisper of wind through forgotten temples, in the pulse of the earth itself, waiting for the moment we stop looking at them as puzzles and start listening to them as stories, because history is not a line, it is a circle. What was lost will rise again. The builders of yesterday will return, not as gods from the sky, but as the dreamers of tomorrow. And when that time comes, when the next veil is lifted and the forgotten dawn shines once more, someone will stand in a ruin, brush away the dust, and whisper our names, wondering who we were, what we believed, and what dreams we left behind. That is the circle of time, the song that never ends. From the darkness of the caves to the light of the stars, humanity walks a path made of mysteries, and in every secret we uncover, we find another reflection of ourselves. So remember this: the earth is not silent, the past is not gone, the dream is not over, it is only waiting, beneath the waves, beneath the dust, beneath the heartbeat of time. And somewhere out there, beyond the horizon, the next mystery is already calling your name. This was Dreams of History. The dream continues.